There we go. All right. We are live, everybody, with another Wine and Comics Pairing show. Sorry for the slight delay and kind of a double delay because I mucked up first and got actually the hour wrong. And I forgot we jumped ahead in time since we scheduled this about a month ago. And I said it was 1:30 p.m. Pacific time. So everyone in the States, I had to quickly, that's why I sent you a new StreamYard link. I quickly revamped and was like, never mind, 2:30 p.m. Is when we're actually doing this, and quickly updated all the social medias. And then Peter had to put his kids to not put his kids down, put his kids to bed in order to show up on the show. But let's get started, everyone. Oh, and let me start it on Instagram. That is also very important. I got to click over there real quick. We are live on Instagram. All right, let's get started. Let's play our opening and get this party started. Here we go. All right. Welcome, everybody. Today we have a very special guest, Peter Harte, the writer of Balor. If I am pronouncing that correctly, you can let me know. Yes. So I think for those in the States and those who don't have an Irish accent, it's kind of like us saying something is baller, right? And so it's like, just say it that way. So honestly, Balor is a very baller comic. So, and that's a pull quote you can take from the Wine and Comics Pairing Show and stick it on the next issue if you like. And here we go. We are talking about, boom, right here, Balor 1 through 3, mythological fantasy adventure. In modern day Ireland, a boy learns the powers of myths don't die. They find new vessels in the shadows. Secret organizations await. All right, let's get to it, Peter. So first off, to get us started, let's talk a little bit about you, because this is your first time on the show. Oh, and by the way, yes, Dallas could not make it. He was actually called for jury duty today, of all things. I don't know how jury duty works over in Ireland, but you're kind of on call all week when you get a jury duty notice over here in the States. And so yesterday he wasn't called in and he made the show, and today he was called in. So exactly, that's just sort of how it goes. And then we'll see if he's not picked for jury duty, actually to be on a jury, he'll be back tomorrow. If sometimes that selection process extends one extra day into tomorrow. And then if he's picked, I might be solo for a while. We'll see what happens on that front. But so it goes. So, but tell me a little bit about yourself. And how you're a creator, you're a writer. How long have you been writing? I get the feeling probably if you are an artistic soul, you've been technically writing for a long, long time. But how long have you gotten serious? When did you get serious about writing? What called you to that? Give us your origin.
Yeah, so I only kind of got serious about writing in around Balor issue 1. Before writing comics, I ran my own podcast, the Superior Comic Show, where I interviewed creators and things like that, similar to yourself.
Yes.
And I was talking to guys like Al Ewing, Ron Mars, Declan Shalvey, Kelly Thompson, all gave me some great advice in terms of writing. And growing up in school, creative writing was my best kind of aspect of English, and I always loved comic books. I just never kind of put two and two together until a friend of mine through the podcast, Task, he was doing an indie comic, Leaders of the Free World, and I seen him post about it, and I was like, wait, you can do that? You can just create your own comic without being
write a
like
comic?
Yeah, you can,
right,
you don't
and
need
get
to
it
be
made
signed.
and get it out there. Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy to me. So from then I reached out to Amy, the artist. So again, she'd been following the show for a long time, and I'd seen her post. She kind of done pin-up art, and I kind of sent her a message saying, "Would you like to do a comic with me?" And she was basically like, "I've never done comic like a comic art." I was
Right,
like, "Neither have I. I've never written a comic." So
right. We'll do it
we're going in
together.
together.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, I feel like, I'm in LA, so I'm around a lot of like filmmakers as well and whatnot. And the origin story there is kind of similar to you. And for me with comics, it's the same thing. And with all these people with film, it's like you love film, but it never quite clicks that you can just go make films. that you can like one day there's a place in that like it's not really an industry in our heads when we're growing up with those things. They're just these magical products that show up in the cinema, on shelves, in video rental houses, what have you. And then that idea that it's like, no, these are just people making these things, and a lot of them, more than you think, aren't even like, they find the publisher later, or they started just making their own stuff in zines and going to conventions and locally, and worked their way up the ladder to get into Marvel, DC, or whatever the bigger brands and companies were. But in your head, you're just sort of like, yeah, you go to work for Marvel or DC, and that's a closed. We don't know how it works, right? And so it's like it's this magical thing. So when you started off in comic, and was Balor #1? Is that your very first thing that you've written that you got out to the public?
Other aside from like reviews and things like that I done for
Okay,
podcast and done for like an
right,
indie website as well, it's the first kind of non-review that
right.
I've released. Yeah.
Fictional thing that you've written versus journalistic. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and for do you still do the podcast by any chance?
I haven't. I actually took a continual hiatus from the podcast when kids came along, and then with the comic
Yeah,
and a full-time job, it was kind of hard to keep up with
yeah,
everything.
yeah.
I do
Something
hope
had
to
to
bring it
give.
back soon,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it's finding that balance.
yeah. 100%. What's the schedule? So you're on the third issue of Baller. How what has been that experience in terms of, have you been doing about like one issue every 4 to 6 months, one issue every year? Like, how has this gone so far for you guys?
So far, it's been an issue a year, mostly because the first issue we didn't realize, we were naive and new.
Right.
We didn't realize the work that went into it. So we came in, Amy done the art and the coloring, I done the writing and the lettering, and we didn't realize how much work went into that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
So we got a
100%. And I
colorist
think
in.
I think Amy's here in the chat here.
There
Hello,
she is.
lads. Hello, hello. Well, yeah. And so how has been that ramp up with between issue 2 and 3? And we'll talk more in detail about the story and honestly your guys' evolution, which even just between issues 1 and 2 was like there was this obvious leap in terms of like how well you were doing it and like kind of finding your feet, finding your voice, finding your look. But in terms of once again the timeline, so issue 1 to 2 it was kind of like once a year. Are you still like, has issue 3, because issue 2 like kind of finished around what, October last year or something like that? Trying to
I
remember.
think, yeah, I think the delivery kind of came in around um, September, October was kind of when
Okay.
all the books were finally delivered to people.
Okay, cool. And what's the this Kickstarter is still in pre-launch mode, so we can't see the
Yeah,
details of the launch. What is your expected delivery month, do you think, for #3?
we're saying June, July, kind of end of June, start of July. So kind
Okay,
of
perfect.
nice kick off the summer.
So you're down to like 3/4 of a year per issue.
Yeah,
So it's like
uh,
chipping away at that. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. I'm waiting
Awesome.
for Amy to pipe up because I keep pushing her saying, right, if we get this one out in
Right. Amy
July,
can be like,
we'll go
excuse
right
me,
in.
hell no.
Yeah, I'm like, we'll go right in and we'll get the next one out by Christmas.
Right, exactly. At which point you'll be at 6 months and that'll be great. But yeah, it's always the onus is on the artist more than the writer for those kinds of things, right? It's like you're running the Kickstarter and that's its own heavy lifting to do and its own like actually running those things. Now that I've done it once, I'm just like, holy crap, that was a lot of work. That was exhausting.
Yeah, oh, it
So
really is. I love it, but it's an ongoing migraine. Amy texts me constantly when we're running the campaign saying, and she literally texts me out of the blue saying, stop checking the Kickstarter page, stop refreshing.
yes, yes. I made a rule to myself after day one, because day one, I was like, okay, oh, actually, no, even on day one, I wouldn't check it until right before I went to bed. So I like let it run for like that solid 12 hours. And I'm like, don't care. I don't care. I'm like, I'm posting on social media, I'm sharing, I'm seeing everyone give it love, but I'm like, I'm not looking at the number
Yeah,
until the end of the day. Then you always kind of need to know how that first 24 hours went, kind of to know, okay, how much heavy lifting am I doing from here for the next 3 weeks? Because if it's a quiet, sleepy start, I got a lot to do, and if it's
Yeah,
a big start, it's like, okay, it's a little pressure off, and whatnot. But then I would not check it. I wouldn't even check it every day. I would just sort of like check in between, because I knew it's so easy to become obsessed. And
yeah.
once you're in the habit of checking, you can't stop checking. So I was like, yeah, I made a rule to myself there. We have Gary Maloney in the chat here. Peter puts in the work, and it's great to see more stuff from him. I bet. Mrs.
Cheers,
and
Gary.
and so and so for Balor, is this still issues 1 through 3? Nothing's come in between that yet for you guys,
No,
right? This is still your number one work that you've been focused on. Okay,
yeah. This is the baby. This is the main baby. Now, Amy knows I've been thinking up some other stuff, but
right.
she has graciously stepped out of the running for artists for that because there's so much work to be done for
Well, of
Balor.
course, yeah. Two books from an artist like that. You either have this, like some artists are gifted with that kind of speed, like whatever their style is, whatever they've developed, and who knows, Amy over time might become certainly faster. And I know a lot of artists that would like start with these like very intricate styles, and as their professional life started taking off, they're like, oh, this is unsustainable. Like, I need to develop my style into something that is more shorthandy, that still looks amazing and still really works and that people love. But it's like, I've got to be pumping this out much quicker if I'm gonna like do this for a living, kind of a thing. Quick question about Amy. Actually, you said you saw the pinups and whatnot. Was
Yeah.
she mostly like, what was she doing with her art when you found her? Because obviously it wasn't comics yet at that point. What was she just posting, like just illustrating for herself and posting it online? Or some people are like tattoo artists, some people are designer work for hire. Like what was she doing with her art?
She was, and I hope she's still listening. She was selling prints and pins and stuff of basically Loki and Winter Soldier in their underwear.
Yes. Okay. Popular. 100%. Beautiful. So, why this? So, let's actually, for a quick moment, take a pause and say what Balor is about. So, this is all about mythological figures, predominantly from Irish myth. I think if you've used anything in the first 3 issues that weren't from Irish myth, I'm unaware of it. They all were foreign myths to me, so I was like, oh, okay, this is great, this is fun. But they're all these myth sort of abilities and powers that are based on these certain mythological figures, are starting to sprout up in the modern world, being bestowed upon regular people, so that they become super powered in that way, but they're all connected to some mythological figure and being called. So then they're taking on the names, or the names are being christened on them, of these mythological figures. And we're following a young guy who gets the powers of Balor, and which the myth is crazy. Maybe I'll let that's one again. I wasn't familiar with it, but sort of an, I don't even know how to describe him, an evil-eyed, third-eyed sorcerer type, Zeus-like, godlike being who was really terrible and got decapitated. And then when he was decapitated, his eye blasts a hole into the earth. Like going, and it's one of those things where you're just like, well, it's myth, right? It's one of those things where it doesn't even make sense, and you have to read it as a myth, and get all the details, because when you try and pick it apart, it's sort of like, where did this? Who thought this up? Who dreamed this up? But he gets the powers of Balor, and then bestowed upon him by a fairy who is also had put fairy powers around Balor's powers, so it's not used for evil. Like Balor can't, like, his persona can't take over this kid and turn him towards the dark side. But that's kind of floating in the background. You could tell that's sort of a threat that's going to be there. And then into this world, he's sort of doing a revenge story for a death of his brother and the people responsible for it. So he becomes a sort of, or he wants to become a sort of vigilante, but then he realizes he's not the only one in this world that there are these mythicals that are all sprouting up, and then a government organization that are hunting down the mythicals. So it just sort of balloons into this grand adventure and this grand bit of world building. So why this story for you? Like, what captivated you about it? And because this is your first thing, this is the thing you're like, I'm going out the gate with this one. So where did this come from, and why is this your first story for everyone?
I've always I've loved Irish mythology growing up. Big thing for me being Irish, but also being Irish, I found full Irish characters in the comics I read were underwhelming or stereotypical, or
Very.
yeah,
Yeah.
you have the odd person who's half Irish, like Steve Rogers, who is pretty cool, but
Right.
he's not full Irish. And
Right.
so I
Right.
wanted
If
to,
you're full Irish, you're basically Banshee, right?
yeah, exactly. So I
Yep.
wanted to break free. I wanted to give a different taste of an Irish hero, and kind of Balor was growing up one of them myths that scared me as a kid. And I was like, okay, it has an
It's a
effect.
freaky ass myth. Yeah.
Yeah, like let's have someone try use these extremely evil powers, but for good, and see how that works out.
Beautiful. And is myth something that, like, where are you finding, where are you choosing all these different mythological characters? Because obviously it's more Balor is the first one, but then we're meeting others. Um, do you have, well, actually that's a question I'm gonna ask in a minute. Um, what I let's start with what made you choose the other myths that are surrounding them, and are they all Irish? I wasn't sure.
So a lot of them that will come in are going to be Irish, and a lot of it is stuff I learned growing up in school, stories from family. But
Right.
now I've posted enough about her on Twitter. But the Akalika is actually a Bolivian myth.
Oh, okay. There you
So,
go.
but being
Beautiful.
living in Ireland, it's very multicultural now, very uh, multinational. So I decided, why not bring other nationalities' myths
Right.
into it as well?
And are the characters, are you trying to connect, like, the girl who gets the Ecalicia myth power, is she Bolivian
Yeah,
ethnicity? So you're kind of picking, like, if that character is something else, their the mythological connection will be from their background, kind of a thing. Is
yeah,
that's the plan? Okay.
yeah. So,
Beautiful.
sorry, just one second. I just have to move location for two
Oh
seconds.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, take your time. Although we do have Amy chime back in. Peter, it was tasteful pinups. Tasteful pinups of Captain and the Winter Soldier, which is a lot of people's both day and night dreams. So what can you say? But keep it tasteful. A little fig leaf down below. Keep it tasteful. All right, and we got lots of people watching us today. I can see the numbers ticking up. Please keep sounding off in the comments if you're here, as we wait for Peter to rearrange and come back up. And let's see, do I have, you know what? I'm going to set up some images from the inside of the comic that we're going to share here, because I think there's some good stuff to share. And I will say, Amy, if you're still listening, listen, it got me through the lockdowns. Yeah. And yes, Amy, since you are still there, and while we're waiting for Peter, I will say that, and you can feel free to sound off in the comments, like in term, like, hey, I'm interviewing you now while we're waiting. Um, but the art in Baller between issues 1 and 2, you had this wonderful leap of really finding your style, I think. And I haven't seen any art from number 3. I don't know if any art is done for number 3 quite yet. I did see the script. But even just between issue 1 and issue 2, one of the reasons I want to throw up some pages here on the screen when Peter comes back is I really want people to see that shift, because one of the best things about seeing artists who are just starting out is kind of seeing that evolution. And no matter how good you are when you start, obviously doing it, it's just you, like, there's so much that evolves from that just naturally. And you had this insane leap between issue 1 and 2 that, like, it was very impressive. So keep it up.
I have returned. Sorry about
There
that.
he is. There he is. No worry. I was kind of interviewing Amy while you were gone. She was still there. So I was like, yeah, we'll just switch it off here.
She
And I
does do
want
the
to make
media for me a lot of times, and sometimes we switch and change when there's last minute issues.
there you go. All right. Yeah, and I want to make sure I'm going to quickly extract a couple pages from the Baller PDF so we can have them up on screen here. We'll do that in just a touch. But yeah, one of the things that really impressed me, I was just telling Amy, was how much you guys grew as a creative team between issues 1 and 2. And I read the script for number 3, and I really want to talk about your script process, because it's fascinating always to see how writers do scripts, and what that style between the creative teams, because you always have, you know, how to work with your artist and like what they need and what they don't need, and how to keep it, give them the details they need without being heavy handed. And every artist is a little different in terms of like what they want from the writer. Oh, yep. And we have, I was just telling her about her evolution between the two. That's very kind. Thank you. I've gotten much faster, believe it or not. Awesome. Peter, I'm sure Peter knows, but I'm sure he's happy to hear that. That's sort of, he's like, yeah, don't get faster. Let's go. But
Chop chop.
so yeah, chop chop. All right, so yeah, oh gosh, I don't even remember what. Oh, I was going to ask you, with the mythological figures. So you yourself, you love the myths when growing up and whatnot. Do you have, and when it comes to the world building of the comic, how much do you have plotted out at this point? Like, how far is Balor? Is pie in the sky thing that is just ongoing forever and ever, or is this like, so is there sort of a finite plan already in place, or what's the pie in the sky dream?
Amy is in the comments laughing right now, I can guarantee. So I have a hyper fixation for this sort of stuff. So when I'm waiting around for a Kickstarter to start or for new pages to come in, I have Balor mapped out for about 10 volumes at the moment.
Okay.
So about 50 issues, and then
Okay, I was gonna say volumes are issued, but you mean issue? Oh, Jesus
yeah,
Christ. Okay.
and then a couple of spin-offs kind of rattling around here too. Um, at the moment, there's no finale at the minute.
No end. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, like it's one of those. What I like about mythology is, especially worldwide mythology, it's infinite. There's so much to learn that I could keep this
yeah,
going for as long as I want, or I could cut it and then I could bring it back years later. So
yeah.
it's kind of, even if it does end, it will always be the end question mark.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Always, you can always revisit. You can always like take a break, come back,
Yeah,
things like that. Yeah, yeah. How long is this first volume? How many issues is planned for that one?
5 issues is planned for volume one.
All right. All right, beautiful. So you are past the or almost past the halfway point once this one
Yeah,
actually gets out the door. Beautiful. And do you have a launch date yet for this Kickstarter? Because you didn't before today, or before the last time we spoke, there wasn't. But is there a date in April where you're pulling the trigger, or are you still feeling it out?
so it's the trigger's ready to be pulled. I'm planning kind of a live launch. Speaking about the podcast earlier, I was planning on kind of bringing it
Right.
back for an episode and doing a live launch of the
Nice.
book. So it's just finding time, hoping to catch Amy on a call tomorrow and finding a
Okay.
time where myself,
That's gonna
Amy,
work.
and a couple of people will be able to get together, go live, launch it, hopefully do well the first hour. So I'd say within the next 10 days.
Okay. Awesome. And one thing, so now I want to talk about a little bit is your script writing and seeing the actual script of issue number 3. It was fascinating. This was a version of comic script writing, and you know, everyone, there's no way to write a comic script. Everyone does it different. There's no, it's not, because comics are so individual to the creative teams more often than not. I'm sure Marvel and DC have like, you know, styles that they kind of want the writers to stick to, because they've got, I mean, they got to produce stuff so fast and on
Yeah,
such a regular basis and whatnot. But generally speaking, unlike film, where things get very, and film, believe me, especially in indie film, it's all over the place. Everyone does it differently. But script writing, if you're going to submit it to like studios and agencies and crap like that, it's like, there's a formal structure where it's like, it really needs to be legible in a very specific format, or people get a little weirded out by it if it's not. So that tends to get a little more rigid. But in comics, it's sort of all over the place. And part of the fun of that, so your script writing, first off, before I say anything, when you approached your very first comic script up to the third one, like, what did you go look online to see if you could download some comic scripts or ask friends that you knew were comic writers to look at their scripts, or were you just like, I'm just sitting down at my computer and I'm going to do this my way? Like how did you get into that, and how did you find your style?
Yeah, I knew it was going to come. Question that script was going to come up. So my first script, I looked up comic book script templates and
Mhm.
how best to write it because I was nervous with my first book. I wanted to get it right. So
Of
the
course. Yeah.
first script, I wish I could have found it, that I sent to Amy was very panel by panel, page by page breakdown. It was like very
Okay.
to the letter. Um,
Right.
Second script was a bit looser, and then the third script, as you can see, it's more so the way I see it is with the book, with the comic, it was more the trust in Amy was grew. Like through the first issue, you probably noticed you have that one of the first pages, you have the panels that are shaped like the eye.
Mhm. Mhm.
That was all Amy. That idea was all Amy. I had it broken down into, I think, 6 panels in that page. She
Okay.
came to me going, "What if we shaped them like an eye?"
Yeah.
And from then on, I kind of was like, I got a bit looser. I was like, I just tell Amy what I want on each page. She's the artist. She knows how it's going to look. So I'll tell her what I want to happen on this page, and from start to finish, how she wants to panel it. That's her free reign as an artist.
Right.
Like she's not just the artist, she's the co-creator, so she has equal
Right.
say.
That's beautiful. And yeah, so one of the curious things. So in issue number 2, there's that beautiful page. It's not I don't think it's a double page spread, but it's this. He's like he's fighting the government agency that's kind of after him, and he's doing this, and it's all this like one giant sort of panel, but broken up into all this action going on with it. And I remember seeing that, like, compared to the first issue, which, as you said, it seemed much more like we're making, like, there was some creativity in there, but it was still like very very structured, where it was
Yeah,
like visually, where it's like, here's a comic page, here's a comic page. And in issue 2, I could just right there, I could feel that huge opening up, where it's like either the artist just got confident, or you got confident in the artist and let her do more, or both. It's, I think it's turning out to be both. And then when I read the script for issue number 3, I was like, oh wow, this barely broken up into panels or even pages. Really, I mean, you literally, by issue 3, that script, every once in a while you drop a little mention, like, for the next 2 pages, here's what's happening, kind of a thing. But it would be just a mention here or a mention there, but it was almost like a minimalist prose,
yeah.
where it's like you're just writing, like, this is happening, dialogue, like this, here's the scene, here's what people are saying, here's a little bit more of what's happening. And it's just sort of like no division. Sometimes you would put spaces in there that were almost like, I'm wondering if in your head the extra spaces meant you kind of you suspected that would be a page, and now here's the next one, kind of a thing. But you wouldn't specify it. You wouldn't say page blank, page blank. Now, were the spaces something in your script that just for your mind you were, you don't, or do you care what the page count is of these comics? That's actually a good question.
Um, yes and no. Like for me, it doesn't bother me what page count is. For my wallet, when it comes to printing, it does matter a bit.
Of course.
Um, but yeah, you're dead on there. The double spaces are usually where in my mind I seen, right, this is a page, but I wouldn't say it to Amy. Like the way I seen it with Amy, the trust grew, and it was like, if I start giving her panel by panel breakdown like I did in issue 1, she's the artist. I don't want to limit what she can do. So I'll give her what I want to
Right.
happen in the story, because otherwise I keep her creativity on a leash. It's like having a Ferrari but never driving it out of the driveway.
Right. Yeah. Awesome.
So
Okay.
it's just,
Yeah. And
yeah,
no, go ahead.
it's just
Sorry.
giving her free reign. It's just that that was the first thing I said to her. I sent her over the script for issue 3, and I was like, first thing you'll notice, there's no panel by panel breakdown. Go nuts.
Yep. Yeah. That's awesome. And the when I see things like that, where the trust between, the creative teams is there, where it's like, this is my story, I don't have to tell you how to, like, visually interpret it on the page. Like, that is something that now, I'm just like, eh. Like I've broken it down for myself so that I know I'm not writing a 64-page comic when I meant to do a 30-page comic. But outside of that, don't really care, kind of a thing. And I did want to say, I think I found, here's that eye image from the first issue. So everyone can take a look at that. Anyone who's not familiar that's watching. So this is that first thing where she did. I
That's actually the
think.
second time she done it.
Oh, that's the second time she did it. Oh shit.
In issue one, yeah, I forgot the first one was I think it was like page one or two where it was the backstory of Balor,
Oh yeah. Okay, I
which
gotcha.
still is one of my favorite pages of the book of the whole series so far, and it was all like I wrote the story, but it was all Amy's creativity that shaped it the way it was shaped.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, hold on real quick. I'm gonna see if I can. Um, these images are tiny little thumbnails. Try and open it. Oh, there it is. Okay, so yeah, you're right. Page technically 4 in the PDF. Let me upload that so everyone can see that one. Page 4. Here we go. So then we can compare the two together here. Uploading. There we go. Boom. So there's the first one. Yeah. You know
And
what? This one, I
that was the
think
first
it was
page she
so.
ever sent me.
That's amazing. Oh wow. Yeah, this one I think when I was reading it and I was reading it, so I was doing a digital device thing, so I was on my phone, so I was pinch zooming in and out, and I think this page I didn't quite grasp the total um design of the page itself. Like I knew the eye was in the middle, and I was like, oh yeah, that's the Balor eye, and that's amazing. But I didn't. The next one was more obvious, I think, in term because of the color separation of everything. But this one, it all just gets dark and blends together. I think it works really well for this dark ass myth background. But yeah, you're right. I don't think I had glommed onto that the first time. And let me see, did I upload the right page for this one? Almost. So it is kind of a double page spread. Okay.
Yeah,
So this is the first one, page 12 of issue number 2. And let me grab page 13 as well, because this is so cool. All right, page 13. Here we go. So as we can see, there's this sort of, I can't get them both up here at the same time. So on this one, he's got some of the way he views his powers is kind of Green Lantern-y, where he's like, shaping things and we're seeing it. And then he's shaping these little pads that he's sort of like moving on. And as we get to the next page that connects to it, he's going up by walk because he can't fly, but he's going up by walking. Kind of, you see all these different people he's fighting, and then he's using the pads to sort of do this fall. But I mean, that was something where when I was reading those pages, I was like, okay, that was really cool. I know that probably was not something that was planned in the writing part of it. But actually, this page is something that my brain has a hard time breaking down. Like when you wrote this, what did you send her for these 2 pages that she then turned into this?
and to be honest, I can't take any credit. But all that page was supposed to be was he was getting chased down by the government organization, the SCMP, and on his escape, he gets nicked by a bullet, which turns out to him falling into the trash right in front of Mary's pub. And
Right.
Amy, we were on a call talking about it, and Amy, I think it was from a Nightwing comic, she discussed about how there was like an ongoing fight
Right.
scene like that. And she said she really wanted to do something like that. I was like, there you go ahead.
Beautiful. Awesome. Oh, and we have ASAP
Uh,
imagination in the house. And then Amy, I can just say literal tears were cried over that double page spread. I know it's a good idea until you do it, right? And then it's like I'm sure you should be very, very proud of those pages, but yeah.
yeah, they're the words.
And of
Amy
course,
hates hearing me say I want a double page here or a splash page here.
now is that because the pressure's on to make it amazing, or what? Yeah.
Like,
What's her what?
I think you'd have to ask Amy. I think it might be the
Okay.
work that goes into the
Okay.
especially the splash page because everything obviously is enlarged because there's no panels. It's just one big page.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Amy, sound off if you can answer that for yourself. But what's the Is it just the literal tears that you will cry every time there's a splash page or a double or God forbid a double splash page and whatnot? Yep, pressure on myself. Whoop, whoop, come back. Pressure on myself. Peter is an actual golden retriever. I'm just very mean to myself. Um, it's funny. Oh gosh, I'm gonna forget which comic. We just had someone on that had a plan, and we saw the pages on digital formats, and it was like this stairway fight, and the pages were going to fold out so that it just kept the stairway fight was going top and down and down, and then you folded it out and it kept going down flights and kept going down flights and just do. And I was like, it was even impressive looking at it digitally. But he's like, yeah, and they will be like gatefold, fold out, dropping down page, and I'm just like, oh my god, that okay, that is
You shouldn't have said that. Amy is shaking right now in case I decide to take that idea.
She's like, no, I have to compete. I have to get over there. Let's see. I can work. Amy's chiming in again. I can work over and over on a page, never be happy. Peter has to pry them out of my hands at this point. Yeah, I know. Um, I can imagine. I mean, even just doing graphic design, which is all I like. I can't draw worth garbage. I stick figures are barely. But graphic design, even when I'm just like designing a thumbnail for something, I'm just like, do these colors even work? I can't tell anymore. And I will sit there for way too long, and I'm like, oh my god, I have 4 more of these to make for this week. I can't just keep doing this. But at the same time, you really do want it to look good. That's the whole point of it. So
I'm just
trembling.
I'm the same. I can't draw for. I can draw. I'm going to draw Pokemon and things like that. Static stuff.
Yeah,
When it comes to
yeah,
stuff
yeah, yeah,
moving, like it's no. That's why I leave all the trust up to Amy. I always worry that when I move on to like my next comic after Balor, I'm like any other artist would probably look at the script I send over to Amy and think that is just lazy. I'm like, I'm
yeah,
trying not to be lazy. I will be on a call with Amy explaining how I wanted to go. I always send her the rough script, and then we have calls like once every week or 2 weeks where she's working on a page, and I'll say, right, this is you have the script there. These are the action scenes I want to see happening, and then the rest is her interpretation. So
yeah,
it is. I don't want anyone to think I'm a fraud and it's laziness. I'm like, but when I have an artist like Amy, I don't want to
yeah.
pen her in to a certain
Hmm.
amount of panels on this page that she could make
Right,
phenomenal with less or more panels.
right. And I know there are people out there like Alan Moore who have just like raised that bar to this like ridiculous level of like overwritten scripts, which you can argue, well, for him it's not overwritten because like that all that information is important to what he's trying to do, and half that information probably isn't even important to the artist, right? And so it's one of those things where you can read the script and the artist is going to be like, okay, I can see everything he wants these pages to be because of all the detail he spread around that. But a lot of that doesn't actually have to be on the page visually. Like that is more what this is all about and why he's writing all this. So I think sometimes writers can write for themselves as much as for the artist, and then pass it off to the artist and be like, you figure out what you need from this, and figure out. And that's one way to do it. But I do think it just matters. Like, what do you need as a writer to feel like this is still your story? That's happening on the page. And as long as you're doing that, and depending on the artist, depending on what they like or don't like, I've talked to many writers where they've worked with artists of both stripes, where some artists are like, no, 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 you have to tell me exactly what you want. Or I might draw some, like, I'm too worried that I'm going to draw something that is not what it's supposed to be. Like, it changes what is actually happening on this, what you meant to have happen on this page. And a lot of the times that can be because there's a language barrier between the writer and the artist. Like it's English is a second language for them, or they're using Google Translate, which happens a lot too. Like they're taking that script and running it through the Google Translate, and so they're like, no, be really clear on what you want, because if it's not in there, I don't know what I'm going to draw here, and it might not be the story you want. But then there are other artists where it's like, yeah, just let me know, like, what is in broad strokes, what is supposed to happen on this page. You know, I think like you and Amy did for the first issue, the writer at first gives them very clear, like they're trying to design the page in the script. and then the artist in the end is just does something else anyway. And so eventually, and it's better. Like, the writer's really pleased with it. They're like, "Ooh, that's a hell of a lot better than what was in my brain." And so at the end, they're like, "Okay, I'm gonna scrap that. I'm not gonna like design the page anymore because plainly you're a hell of a lot better at this than me." And they just go with that flow. So yeah, that's
Exactly.
yeah.
It's I'm Irish, Amy's Scottish. We have rebellion built into our system, so no matter what
Don't
way I
tell
was
each
gonna
other
say
what
it to
to
her,
do too much, right?
exactly. It's we just gotta. She'll tell me to calm down about as much. She'll tell me slow down, stop being 84 issues ahead of where we are, and I'll tell her stop going over the same page over and over again. I'm sure it's
Right,
perfect. Send it over,
right.
and that's about as much as we will give out to each other. Other than that, it's you rebel your way, I'll rebel my way. We'll make a good book.
And we'll make a double rebellion book, and
Yeah.
and how that comes out of the wash is how it comes out of the wash.
Yeah.
Well, when I feel if you're on the indie comic scene, like that always translates fairly well. I think it's kind of like the old like black and white heyday of the '80s and the underground comic scene, and indie and underground comics have always had that sense of like we love comics, but at the same time we're not just looking to do what we've always seen before. Like there's a reason we're making a comic at this point, and there's a reason we're not just trying to be a work for hire at Marvel or DC. And yeah,
Yeah,
I think
no,
that yeah.
100%. It's what I love about indie comics is, and I will openly admit, the first issue, as well as being over descriptive to Amy in the script, I would played it very safe, I find, with the origin story. I put a
Hmm.
lot of aspects of myself in there as well, but a lot of people kind of noted to me that they found the character very similar to Peter Parker,
Yeah.
which with me, I'm a big
Oh, there you
Spider-Man
go.
fan. So
Hold that up one more time. I'm making it bigger so everyone can take a look there.
I'll
There
see
it
if I can get
is.
a
Oh,
good.
that's and is that Venom on the other? Yeah,
I'll see if I can get a full.
yeah. Oh, goddamn, that's glorious. Wow. All
Yeah, so
right.
I'm big Spider-Man fan. So I did play it safe with the origin, which by issue two I tried to maybe play a bit more fast and loose, and then issue three, I think I just came a bit unhinged and just let it go a bit.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, Amy's chiming in when we've just worked together for like 4 years at this point. There's that pace again. Nice, slow, and methodical, but I mean that's how you got to start. So we kind of know what the other is expecting and how to meet in the middle. It's pretty great with no clashes. Awesome. I mean that's the ideal. That's what you want. That's what you're going for. Um, So, in terms of comic book influences for you, obviously Spider-Man. Outside of Spider-Man, so what's your greatest era of Spider-Man for you?
It's going to be very controversial, but it's the
Okay,
one I grew up on, which was Ultimate Spider-Man.
okay, yeah, no,
Yeah,
I don't think that's controversial at all. I think okay, I'll let you. I'll just say this is not about me, but like Ultimate Spider-Man was. I haven't read the entirety of like the OG Bendis Ultimate Spider-Man run, but I read like the first 50-ish issues or something like that. Like I made it far into it, and I wish that reimaginings and things like that would like that was a brilliant reboot without having to f with the main line and just giving the next generation their own version that was more in tone and style and character. Like everything was updated for that period in time. And I love that. And it was exceptionally well done. Like Bagley and Bendis were just such an amazing team. The way they reincorporated all the old characters and concepts and then threw in some new ones as well. Absolutely genius. I wish they stopped rebooting the main line all the time and just did things like Ultimate Spider-Man for the new generations. That yeah, it's a great comic. So yeah,
it is.
but
I 100% agree. Like the funny story was when that came out, I was 6 and I was a big fan of
oh wow,
Spider-Man, and my grandmother wanted. I'd always talk about comics, and she wanted to get me a comic, and she was looking up, oh, first appearance of Spider-Man, and obviously the first comic she seen was Amazing Fantasy
right?
15, and it's like 10 grand. I was like, yeah, not
Oh
a
yeah,
hope.
yeah,
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 next thing was Ultimate Spider-Man #1, so she got
yeah,
me that, and I still have a lot of that run to this day. I have the first appearance of Miles Morales.
yeah.
Uh, I have the the only comic book that's ever made me cry, The Death of Peter Parker.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it was a huge influence on me. Like Peter David and Mark Bagley were okay. Just that
Yeah.
was my childhood. That was
That's awesome.
my ticket to being bullied for years until comics became cool again.
Yeah, yeah, that too. I feel like, thankfully, we're I think we're finally reaching that like geek nerd era internet culture where it's like being a geek is no longer that big of a bullying thing. Or at least not so much in the States anymore. I don't know. Maybe over there it's still like
Uh,
frowned
We're all
upon.
good now. Yeah,
We're all
we're
good
all good.
now. Okay,
Yeah,
beautiful.
everyone goes to see the movies, so we're all good now.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's so bloody mainstream now that I mean, people, the mainstreamers still don't really spend that much money on comics per se, but they're no longer like you're into Spider-Man, that's weird, you're a
Yeah,
dork. Um but yeah, that ultimate run, that's the joy of so I've been making this argument on social media recently where it's like every generation deserves its own version of these characters. It makes it so much better, and for us old fogies, it's like, look, we had our version. We loved it. We grew up with it. That version, sure. If Marvel has the bandwidth, keep going with that for us, and then give the new generations a new version. If they don't have the bandwidth for that, let the old one end and
yeah,
let us all move on. We can then enjoy the new version if we want to, if we're into that or not. But that the new versions are always, because even think about the death of Peter Parker, like the true death of Peter Parker, which happened in the Ultimate line and affected you so much because this was your version. And they
yeah,
could never do that to the old version, not for real. They could do it as a sell more issues, but it's like he would come back pretty freaking fast. When like I grew up during the Clone War saga era, and the whole like being replaced by someone was a big deal, but of course they had to undo it eventually. they
yeah.
they couldn't stick to their guns on that. So I'm always like, yeah, let the old ones end, let us all move on, or join the new generations on their new version if we want to do a redo and see where that goes and we're interested. But it's like it's so much better if every generation just gets its own, that gets to do crazy, amazing new things that weren't done with the old version. And that can be effective all over again. And that would be the best way for all these like legacy characters to go. And we'll see now that a lot of them are going to enter public domain soon, that might be what actually winds up happening, like just by necessity, because they have to have a new iteration that is not in public domain anymore. But we'll see. I feel like
Yeah, no,
but yeah.
I do. I agree with you there. I think like if they want to keep the Amazing Spider-Man going, keep him going, but give the new generation a starting point that isn't just legacy numbers. Like, where they just put it
Right.
back to number one and just put legacy numbers 802. Give the
Right.
new
Right.
generation a starting off point. See if the new generation is as interested as the old generation. And if they are, have the two running side by side, different
Right.
universes, whatever. But
Right.
then if you want to keep the superhero genre sustainable, you need new generations coming in and not being overwhelmed by
Right.
where do I start?
Right. Well, and one of the reasons Ultimate Spider-Man, and in the end, when they even tried to undo like the OG Peter Parker's marriage and things like that, was for the younger readers, right? Is they're like, oh, this older married guy's just not interesting to the teens, and it's like, well, that's true, but there's other better ways to do it than crafting a story where everything we've just been following for the last 20 years is like undone, a snap of
Yeah,
the fingers. And it's like that was kind of boring and felt cheap and not great, whereas Ultimate Spider-Man wound up taking off, I think, for a reason. And even with something like Miles Morales, even though he was introduced in something like Ultimate Spider-Man, I think that's an important thing too, is as we all become more global, more multicultural, representation is different, your readership is actually changing. Having True Blue, completely different versions of these characters for these new generations, where it's like, this is going to be more meaningful for you rather than what was meaningful to a generation from 1940, is just, that's important. I
yeah.
think
Look,
for
if I
comics
look at it
longevity.
and if I think kind of if Ultimate Spider-Man hadn't been around at the time and I had asked people where do I get started in Spider-Man comics? Well, you have to start here, but then you have to read this and this and this.
Right.
I don't
Right.
think I would have bothered. I think I would have just kind of stuck with the movies and the TV shows.
Yeah. 100%. And you would have gotten a different answer from every person you asked,
Yeah,
right? Of like, well, how should I can't read all of them. Like I can't buy all of them. So where do then when you were growing up too, that was still pre like all these digital libraries, but even the digital
yeah,
like you could subscribe to Marvel Unlimited or something like that. I don't know if that's overseas. I'm assuming it probably is, or you have something
it
similar to
is.
that.
It is.
It
Yeah,
is.
no, I think like back then, so that was kind of 2000. So I don't think it was around. I'm not sure if Marvel Unlimited was around then.
Right.
I kind of
Yeah,
that's
that's
where
too
that's
soon.
how.
There were no
Yeah, that's
smartphones
how.
then. So yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how old I'm
Yeah.
feeling now. Like I got into comics now 24 years ago was my first
Yeah.
Spider-Man comic.
Yep. Yep. So besides Spider-Man, greatest comic influences.
In terms of characters, or are we talking creative teams?
Both. Feel
Both.
free to give me a medley.
Um, Jason Todd.
Mm,
Love Jason Todd. Loved Red Hood. Loved the whole kind of prodigal son
yeah.
style of his story. I was a big fan of that. X-Men. Always, anyone loved the X-Men, the Chris Claremont run. Yeah, I don't think you can
Yeah.
fault that. Um, a lot of books by Irish creators, like I've read Spider-Man 2099 was a big one
Hmm.
because Will Sliney was on the art, an artist from Cork here in Ireland.
Okay.
It was actually my second interview for the Superior Comic Show when it first started up.
Amazing. That's
Uh,
cool.
yeah, so like in terms of characters, I lean towards more the flawed hero. So you have your Spider-Man who's flawed, Wolverine, Iron Man was
Hmm.
an alcoholic,
Yeah.
s- stuff like that, and the teams, the mix and match teams where these kind of people don't usually go together because that's how it was when I was growing up. It was I was the nerdy one. We had a guy in the group who was the sporty one, so
Right.
it it felt right. Uh, but I love the likes of the Flash. So it takes have me on the spot now.
Like
Yeah.
Wally West Flash era. I'm assuming.
No, actually, Barry Allen was
Barry
always
Allen.
my
Okay.
yeah. Barry Allen was my favorite Flash. I will openly admit, in terms of power level, Wally West is superior, but Barry Allen
Was
was
your
always
guy.
my Flash.
Yeah.
But then the likes of Venom, when although I'm
Mm.
still iffy about Venom being an anti-hero rather than a fully fledged villain,
Hmm.
I'm still a bit iffy on that.
I'm with you there. I'm with you
Yeah,
there. We gave them
yeah,
more to do with him than just showing up as a villain now and again. But when he, so I was the first appearance of Venom, I was still a kid at that point, and this was I wasn't even going to comic shops yet. They existed, but I didn't really know of them. I was too little. I was still getting them from the spinner racks, from like the grocery stores and pharmacies and things like that. And I remember I got the issue 299 where he shows up on the last page right before his big like showdown for issue 300. And I was so young, I didn't understand how comics worked. I didn't realize they were monthly. I didn't know when they came out. So when I read that issue 299 and saw him creep out, like, it's like I don't know if you have read those issues. I'm assuming you probably have, but he's like, it's just the eyes in like he's in shadows, and then the mouth, just like the smile just grows, and then he pops out. And I was like, oh my God. I went back like every day looking for the next issue. I didn't know how long I was supposed to wait. So I just kept looking for it, and it was like down the street. And it took when you're a kid, a month is an epically long time. It's like an era of your life. So you're just sort of like, oh my God. I remember just, chewing my fingernails waiting for that issue 300 to come out. So yeah, he's always been one of my favorites too.
yeah, no, 100%. Like it's when I went in, thankfully I went in to get this tattoo off a guy who was into comics as well, and when I have my different styles, so I was able to tell him for the Spider-Man, I want John Romita Jr. style Spider-Man. For the Venom, I want the McFarlane Venom.
McFarlane. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it is they all kind of impacted me. I never growing up, I never kind of took note of who was writing and who was on art. I just kind of read the story because
Right.
when you're a
Right.
kid, as bad as it sound, it doesn't really matter to you the names on the front of
No.
the book.
Well,
You
and the
just
names are
want
names. I mean, you're like,
yeah,
I think some of the names I saw so often, like my eyes just glanced off the credits, that as I got older, so many of them were familiar visually, like seeing the name. And so probably helped me in the long run, but yeah, they don't mean anything to you. They're just
Yeah,
random names. Yeah.
exactly. You don't realize like these names that you just skip over the cover are having this impact on you. They
Yeah.
are the book. A
Right.
big one for me recently, kind of just before I started writing Balor. I was chatting to Declan Shalvey and Al Ewing
Oh
and Kelly
yeah.
Thompson, and the three of them. Declan is an amazing artist, and Al Ewing,
Hmm.
his run on the Hulk, the Immortal Hulk, loved the whole horror style of it. And
Yes.
then Kelly Thompson, we had her in Captain Marvel on Kate Bishop, and just these people blew me away with. I was like,
Yeah.
these are just normal people that I'm talking to right now, and they're doing this, so why can't I?
Right. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Kelly Thompson. She did my favorite comic of last year, that Black Cloak comic from Image. I don't know if you read it or got your hands on it, but it's really good. So I highly recommend that. That was the one that convinced me. I was just like, I had read some of her before, but I read Black Cloak, and I'm just like, okay, I'm reading everything you do now. Like
Yeah,
after this one.
I would highly recommend her run on Black Widow.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I haven't read that yet.
Amazing work.
Beautiful. And Declan Shalavi, time before time,
Time
if
before
or
time.
is it after before time? I have the whole series. I read the first story arc. So I'm a time travel freak. I'm a sucker for a good time travel story. So in a complex one, I'm just like, oh, gold, please suck me in. So I've only read the first storyline so far, but I have the whole. I waited for the series to finish after that, but I pre-ordered every single issue and got it to like support the series and get to for it to get to the end. So I have all 29 issues, and definitely, I mean, even just based on the first storyline I've read, I'm like, everyone go check out Time Before Time. That is a
Yeah,
brilliant series, and I can't wait to actually have the time to sit down with the whole thing and read it in fairly short order. I'm hoping for. Um,
it is he's a great guy as well. I was shocked when I started doing the podcast, how many comic writers and artists were from Ireland. Like
yes,
had like Keane Tormey, who was on the Sons of Superman. So he was in that run where,
right.
was it John Kent, came out as boy, and they were getting a
Oh
lot of
yeah, yeah,
backlash
yeah.
on it. We talked about that, but still it baffled me. It was like, we're such a small island. I didn't realize so many people had broken into the mainstream comic scene.
Yeah. I think, I was growing up during the Vertigo era, like as Vertigo was like blowing up and taking off. So it's not Irish specific, but sort of like Irish, British, Irish, Scottish, like so many creators from all three places like started to break big in America. So that when I was growing up, I thought I was like half our fucking industry is UK and like over there. But I loved it because it was storytelling and styles of storytelling, styles of dialogue, styles of characterization that was new to me because it
Yeah,
wasn't something that we had been really exposed to until then very often. But yeah, in my brain, I'm like, yeah, ever since then, you guys have been like integral to the American comic scene, like a huge chunk of it. I couldn't tell you exactly because again, you just see names. So it's like you couldn't really say who is from where. You have to like Google them to find out. But I think ever since the 90s, the entirety of Scotland, Ireland, Britain has just been so like I don't want to say I have no idea what percentage, but it always seems like a big percentage. But I think it's been for the best because the British comic scene, at least with like 2000 AD and whatnot, was always like they were a very well established. Marvel UK was something I was really into. We had our own line of that in the late 90s and into the OOs. I don't know if you were aware or knew, or I don't know if that was only in America where they even released the Marvel UK brand
I,
of
I know we
things.
had Captain Britain and things like that, but kind of growing up Irish, I'm
Uh,
sure Amy will back me on this. You got brownie points there from both of us, by the way, because you separated Britain, Ireland, and Scotland. So that's
yes,
big brownie points there.
yes,
But yeah, growing up, learning about Irish history and stuff. For the longest time, I was anti anything with a Union Jack on it. So if I
of
seen a
course.
Union Jack on anything, I'm not picking it up. So
Right.
a lot of those stories I would have missed and kind of just glossed
Understood.
over.
I mean, fair. For good you know, that all exists for good reason. All those feelings, but yeah, I think over in the States, we were, or from my POV, we were like practically inundated with so many great comics coming from that side of the world. And just, I mean, I ate them up. It was so much more. I probably at one point was reading more from creators from those three countries than than creators that were actually living in the States. So but yeah, but it's interesting that I don't like, I've never been to Ireland myself personally, so it's like I don't have a good personal conception of like how big or small, or how, the population or what have you. So but I'm assuming, I know comparatively to most other countries, like Ireland is a fairly small place. It's a fairly, the population's not huge, and so yeah, I can see. I think the ratio of how many creators are coming from there probably is very surprising. But
Yeah, look, I'm pretty sure the population at the moment is 7 million in
okay,
the entire of
yeah,
Ireland. And also,
California alone has a bigger population than that.
yeah,
Yes.
also just to point out for my last point, just in case it came across wrong, I don't hate English people
Oh,
anymore.
no, no, no. But
Yeah,
well, right, but growing up, like you said, your
yeah,
rebellion. One, the spirit of rebellion is alive and well.
yeah,
Especially when you're younger. There's like the spirit of rebellion just because of your age is alive and well as well. Those two things come together, and it's like you got to go through that. I mean, again, I'm trying to think if there's a decent I mean, like, I guess in the States we just kind of hate each other, like different states. So you have your, but you do, where, depending on where you grow up, West Coast, East Coast, Heartland, like, you're very dismissive of the places that aren't for you, and that, have always given you crap, and so you give them crap back, and it's like it's a long history. And so we have our comparables
yeah.
in that.
It's all I say it now. Like I take the mick a lot of the time with any of my English friends. It's all banter at this stage.
Yes.
I always have
Oh
to make
yeah.
sure that nobody takes me too seriously. It's None of it is serious. I don't hate
Right.
you. I hate what your ancestors did, but
Of
that's not
course.
you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's a,
Yeah, yeah.
it's all just
Well,
tongue in cheek.
yes. We had a creator on that I didn't know where he was, a American creator, but I didn't know where he was living. And he's like, "Oh, I'm in Arkansas," and I was like, "Oh God." I was just like, "No, no, 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 no." I'm like, "You got to get out of there." And he's like, "I work at a university here. I'm pretty well. I'm pretty comfy." And I'm like, "Oh, geez." I'm like, "The weather sucks. The people suck. The government sucks." I'm like, "Nothing about that place is good, man. I'm so sorry." But I felt for him as well, because I'm like, Arkansas. I can't even imagine living there. But so yeah, I get it.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
all just it's all just funny. I've talked to people on the podcast before who I was like, "Oh, where are you from?" They're like, "Oh, I grew up in this part of England," and my initial reaction, without no filters, "I'm very sorry to hear that."
yeah. All right. So let's actually talk really briefly, and then we'll get to wrapping this up soon, because I know it's late where you are. But let me ask you this one last thing, and let's go over what people can expect from this Kickstarter, and then we'll get to the wine pairings. But in terms of this campaign, outside of obviously the 3 issues of Baller, what else can people expect in terms of what they can pledge for? Is there anything new that you're going to be offering in this campaign that weren't in the previous ones?
Yeah, and so actually taken off the tier I usually do of like the Balor t-shirts, is what I'm wearing now. I'm gonna kind of add it as an add-on because the tier was up and down, and kind of money wise, as you know yourself, after running the Kickstarter, it can
Yeah,
something like that could tank the bank account. Uh,
gotcha.
yeah, but I'm doing early bird tiers for the first time. So
Okay.
there's like for the first 72 hours of the Kickstarter, there's a discount on each tier. So you can get the physical book for cheaper, you can get the special edition. So foil covering is the new one as well. I've never done before.
Ooh, oh,
So,
I'm such a suck. Yeah, that's my generation. I'm such a sucker.
so I'm doing the foil covering, and I'm gonna do there's a certain limited amount of books that will be numbered. So you'll know whether you're getting the second one that was ever printed. And I'm gonna keep the number one. I was gonna keep it to myself, but I think I might do like towards the end of the Kickstarter to bring in more interest. I might put it up for grabs and put in a raffle for anyone who's pledged. So by the end of
Very
the Kickstarter,
cool.
someone who's pledged for a physical tier will get that first Balor issue 3 ever printed.
That's awesome. All
And then
right.
I made Amy do only made Amy do 2 covers this time instead of the usual 3.
Whoop, are you cutting? I think I just cut out there. Say that last bit one more time.
I was just saying I only made Amy do 2 covers this time instead of 3, so she only had to do the one variant, which is
Ah, beautiful.
actually
Okay.
the one on in the background there. That so big thing about Balor issue 3 is it's the debut of Balor's super suit,
You're right.
and I wanted a variant cover based off the debut of the symbiote Spider-Man suit from Secret Wars. So Amy
No,
designed the cover as an
yeah, that's right.
homage
That
to
is the
that.
pose. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, technically the suit debuts in issue 2, but not him wearing it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
People, I'm hoping that the comic gets big enough for people to argue about that for years, like they do
Yeah.
about
What was the
Wolverine's
first
first
appearance of the
appearance.
suit? Exactly. Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. All right. Anything else or any
Yeah,
last things? Nope.
as far as I can think now, Amy's probably sitting there saying, "You forgot this, you forgot this." But
Well,
as
Amy,
far as I can tell,
comments, yep,
that's
fire away. The comments are there for a reason. Tell him what he got wrong, what he missed. All right, beautiful. Well, I think we're at the point where we're going to reveal the wines we decided to pair with Baller. And my co-host actually texted me and sent me his pairings as well, even though he couldn't be here personally. So we didn't want you to miss out on 2 pairings just because he couldn't be here today. So I'm going to start though. I think with mine, and I think there are there's a lot. So this comic, it is there is a great underground indie darkness to the whole thing, as well as being super. You've got that pulpy superhero action element going on as well. So it's light, it's fun, but it's also do you, this. I mean, this is way before your time. But if anyone watching or anyone in the chat or you yourself, Peter, did you ever hear of I believe it was a Canadian comic company from the 80s and 90s, independent black and white company called Aircel, Aircel?
not myself.
No,
I
not your
wouldn't have
thing.
heard. No,
Okay. They did a lot of comics in the 80s and into the 90s. They did things like there were these things called Dragon Ring, which was like this martial arts fantasy thing. Warlock 5, which was a big cyberpunk William Gibson sci-fi kind of thing. They did Elf Lord, which was their high fantasy thing. They did lots, and they were huge during the time. And Baller feels very much like an Aircel comic to me, which is unfortunately not going to mean anything to you. But they were, again, it has this, like, as we mentioned earlier, this very rebellious, we're making our own thing, we're doing it our way, we're learning as we go, but it's all very well put together. The art just keeps improving in leaps and bounds, from page to page, issue to issue. The story itself is accelerating at a like you said, you played it safe in that first issue, but then just issue 2, so much happens. And then I've read the script of issue 3, so I know much more is going to happen there. Issue 3 really kind of this doesn't give anything away because I'm sure this will be basically the logline of issue 3, but like the first big action issue, for lack of a better way of saying it. So this has that spirit of like the true blue underground indies, while also containing that nice element of true blue mainstream superheroics. And I wanted to pair something that had those 2 elements to it. So for me, I wanted to find something that was it was fun, it was bold, it was balanced, and but intense in its way as well. And so for me, I had to go with a French Cabernet Sauvignon. The one in particular for me is this Chateau de Vimier. It's a Haut Medoc. This is a 2020. And this guy, I'm from California, and the Cabernets here just kind of go in the really heavy, dark, brooding. it's intense, but it's mostly just intense. Nothing lifts it up, nothing keeps it fresh and lively. And a French Cabernet Sauvignon is very different. It's got that intense tannins, it's got the intense fruit, it's got the intense body. Like, it's all very, like, there's a lot there and there's a lot in the glass, but then it keeps a medium high acidity that you do not get with California Cabernet Sauvignons. Nothing that you get in the States. We're too hot. Our climate just doesn't go for that. But they can make this stuff to where there's this buoyancy to it. It keeps it kind of fresh on the palate. Doesn't keep you feeling it's not too heavy. The alcohol is a little bit lower than what you'd get in California. Still not like super low, but I think we're 14%. But Cabernet Sauvignons here are like probably closer to these days, probably 15 to 15.5, if not a little bit higher. So it's just a little less punchy when you're going in with this, and it just keeps you like, you can have more than one glass of this without feeling like you're done for the day. And I feel like for me, this was my favorite thing to drink while reading Balor 1 and 2. I felt like it was just everything that matched with that. So if you guys, Haute, if you find that region, it's a big region, does a lot of Cabernet Sauvignon from France. Probably, I don't know what the wine import laws are in Ireland. I know they have a lot of this stuff in Britain. I don't know how much it gets up there, but likely you guys aren't too far away. So likely you can find that pretty easily. And I will say, as a backup, I think another thing that we can do, and my co-host went this direction a little bit, is sparkling wine. If you can get a sparkling wine that is properly dry and is properly, if you can get it made with Pinot Noir, which a lot of you can always check out what kind of sparkling wine can do that. And in fact, let me actually share on the screen here real quick. There is this one sparkling wine that I thought, I don't have a bottle of it, but this is a British sparkling wine. So sorry. But this is a British sparkling wine that I figured this might be something you could find up there in Ireland. And British sparkling wine is something that's becoming really good these days. So we're getting it over here in the States a little bit more than we ever had before. I'm going to share my screen real quick and show folks what this is. But this is a Hush Heath Estate Balfour 1503 Classic Cuvée, and it's mostly Pinot Noir, a little bit of Chardonnay, and then a little bit of Pinot Meunier. And this is just everything about this sounded exactly it. I tried a Blanc de Noir, which is a pure Pinot Noir sparkling from California, and it worked really well. I think the ones that are made with Pinot Noir, there's a little more oomph to it. There's a little more something spicy rather than the Chardonnay. The stuff that's made with pure Chardonnay is just a little too light, a little too gentle. And this one's got a little bit more of an edge, but then that sparkling effervescence just keeps it in that pulpy, super heroic, and matches those tones. Doesn't hurt that I like the idea this was called Balfour and we're Balor. It's very close. So there was that little piece of it as well. But what my co-host decided to do is, and I'm going to read this out. He sent me a text. So he said, I think the world they've crafted is fun with just enough drama to keep the reader interested. It's a refreshing take on the revenge tale. So I chose something which is both refreshing and complex. So I chose also an unconventional wine. His number one choice was the Splendida Fragolino Strawberry Sparkling, one that is full-bodied and crisp. So let me share here. This is the Splendida Fragolino. Yes, I'm 21. Don't even let me look at the page if I don't click that. So you're looking for as you can see from the description here, are you looking for a light, delicate, and fruity alternative to the usual sparkling wine? This unique combination of the best sparkling sweet wine with carefully selected wild strawberries, a velvety, balanced, elegant taste. And he also mentioned as a backup, if you couldn't find this is an Italian sparkling wine, but if you couldn't find this, he had a backup, an Irish strawberry wine. Right here, this is the Wicklow Way wines. And this is I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce this right, but however you pronounce this, Meunier. Would you know, Peter?
Have a look there. Where is it? I'm trying to get close to
Let's
it.
get it closer. There you go. The Moineir.
I'm not even gonna attempt it.
Okay.
My
I'll
brother
go
could
with
be watching.
Moignet.
Yeah, yeah. My
Let's
brother could
just
be
say
watching, and
that.
if it is an Irish word, if it is a word Oscailga, he will kill me if I butcher it. So I'm not even gonna attempt.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. So I'll say Moignet. I'm an American. I butcher everything. No one. I'm used to it. So we'll call it the Moignet. But this is their straw. It's made with stunning strawberry wine made here in Ireland from locally grown strawberries, no grapes. It's just a strawberry made a wine made from the fruit of strawberries. And this group, the Wicklow Way wines, they make raspberry, blackberry, and strawberry wine are their three claims to fame. So yeah, this would be a backup if you can find this. It won't be sparkling, but it will have a lot of the same flavor profile as the Italian sparkling strawberry wine. So those were his pairings for Balor, and there you guys go.
And I'll make sure I'll add them to the shopping list.
There you go. See what you can find. Because again, one of the hardest things with wine are all the import export laws, and we suffer it here in the States. It's so weird getting wine across state lines, for God's sakes, which is just stupid. But it can be a thing. Like the wine I have available to me might not be available to others, so we try and always have alternatives. We always try and have like some broader recommendation that hopefully translates between brands, because you never know what people have available to them. But anyway, French Hut Medoc Cabernet Sauvignon, if you can find that. A nice sparkling made out of Pinot Noir, if you can find that, or strawberry wine through and through. That was my co-host's big thing. So, all right, and the one thing we always ask of our guests is to shout out a comic that they love or have been loving, and pair it with a beverage of their choice. So, what you got, Peter?
So I have the green screen's gonna mess with it.
Hold it close. Hold it close.
Let's see.
It might work. There you go.
So this is Infection, so this is issue 2, by H.L. Roberts, a good friend of mine. Weirdly enough, weird things like we grew up in this indie comic scene. He released Infection 1 around the same time Balor 1 was out, and he's currently crowdfunding for issue 3 at the moment.
Awesome. All right.
I think there's like 2 days left of the campaign, and then he's taking a break from comics. So I definitely recommend anyone goes checks out Infection. It's a nice, different take to the zombie kind of genre, which I really like. I've kind of had my fill of The Walking Dead, so it was nice to have kind of something new in terms of like. I wish I could show pages, but again, the green screen is messing up, and this room is a mess.
Here, I just put the Kickstarter link in the chat for everyone right there, and let me I can share his Kickstarter page real quick. And we can just take a look right here. So, Infection issue 3. Oh, here we go. Very nice. There you are.
There's me. Yeah, I got my issue 2. He signed it. A very nice message on it as well.
Beautiful.
Yeah, he's a good lad. But yeah, in terms of, so I'm not usually a big wine drinker myself. So in terms of Infection, Amy's gonna laugh at this because she always gives out to me for drinking this. But in terms of Infection, I have paired it with a nice can of Monster.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Just what's the flavor of that Monster?
Oh, it's original.
Basic, original. Perfect.
Basic, because to me, Infection is an original take on the genre. It's high energy.
There you go.
Yeah, and it packs a punch. And it will be, if you ingest too much of the Infection, you will be addicted, and it's hard to quit it.
Beautiful. All right, guys. Infection, 2 more days on Kickstarter. That link's there in the chat. Definitely, I'm gonna go check it out as soon as we get off this live stream, because I've never tried any of them, and I can at least get them digitally, nice and easy, even though he's over there. I try these days. It's always so hard to do physical when it's like from Australia or from the UK or from Ireland. I'm just like, oh God, it has to be. I'll do it for like trades, but usually
Yeah.
not for individual issues. But definitely the digital. I'll have to go do a digital catch up. Is issue 3 the last issue, or is he just going to take a break and then come back to it? He just needs a pause.
Yeah, I think he was saying it might be the close. I think it was a mini series.
Okay.
And actually, what you were saying there, actually, it might be a good point that I forgot to mention about the Balor Kickstarter. In terms of the shipping and stuff, everyone always questions. I've got a few questions on the first issue about the price of the tiers. Shipping's included in all those tiers. There's no
Beautiful.
whatever you see on the tier is including shipping. There's no extra added on after. If the shipping costs a couple of euro more than I anticipate, that's on me. I'll
Right.
send it. I want anyone who can to get Balor into their hands. So if I have to pay a bit extra for shipping, I've no problem doing that. But shipping's
Beautiful.
included in all the tiers, so there's no
All right.
after
No
click
hidden
cost.
costs. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Upfront, all
Exactly.
upfront.
Beautiful. All right, guys. Well, that is once again Balor, which will be launching later in April as soon as Peter knows can get his podcast launch stream scheduled. But that's coming very soon, so keep an eye out for that. The link to that pre-launch page, if you'd like to sign up to be notified when it launches, is right below this video on YouTube. So go there, and that link will be there for you. Also, don't forget to check out Infection on Kickstarter. I just typed the word infection in a search on Kickstarter, came right up. It's the only thing on there that came up. So you'll find it real easy. But go there and check that out as well. And once again, this has been the Wine and Comics Pairing Show. Thank you so much for being here, Peter. This has been a
Thank you for
blast.
having me.
I'm gonna let you get some sleep now.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right. Ciao, everyone, guys. We'll catch you next time. Sign in.